Tejo gripped the controls of his cargo ship as the massive structure of Nexus Station filled his view screen. The station was huge, bigger than any city he had ever seen. Metal and glass stretched in all directions, with thousands of docking bays and entry points. Ships of every shape and size moved around it like insects around a giant flower. This was his first trip to the core worlds, the rich and advanced part of the galaxy that everyone talked about. His cargo hold was full of rare metals from the outer systems. If he could sell them here, he would make enough money to buy a better ship and maybe even start his own trading company. Tejo had heard stories about Nexus Station from other pilots. They said the entry process could take months. Every species had to go through something called consent protocols. The station authorities would scan your mind, check your background, and make sure you were safe to enter the core worlds. Some pilots had waited over a year just to get permission. The communication system crackled to life. "Cargo vessel, please state your species and purpose," came a voice from the station. "This is Pilot Tejo from Earth. I'm human." "Carrying metal cargo for trade in the core worlds," he replied. There was a pause. Then the voice came back, sounding almost surprised. "Human, please proceed to docking bay 247. Welcome to the core worlds." Tejo stared at the communication panel. That was it? No questions about his cargo? No mention of waiting periods or consent protocols? He had expected to sit in a holding area for weeks, not get immediate clearance. As he guided his ship toward the docking bay, he could see other vessels waiting in long lines. Huge ships with crystal bodies that belonged to the Vorthak people floated in organized rows. Smaller ships that looked like they were made of living plants carried the tree-like Sylvari. Gas-filled containers held the cloud-like nebulites. All of them were waiting. Tejo's ship moved past all the waiting vessels and straight to his assigned bay. He could see alien faces watching him through their ship windows. Some looked confused, others looked angry. After docking, Tejo walked through the station corridors. The place was enormous and busy. Aliens of every type moved through the halls. He saw the insect-like cricks clicking to each other in their musical language. A group of Vorthak stood perfectly still, their crystal bodies glowing as they shared thoughts. The nebulites floated in their special breathing containers. But something felt strange. The aliens were looking at him, not with curiosity, but with something that felt like jealousy or anger. Tejo had never experienced this before. Usually humans were just another species among many. He found his way to the trading district and quickly sold his cargo for a good price. The core world buyers were efficient and fair, just as he had heard. Within a few hours, he had completed business that should have taken days. Walking back toward his ship, Tejo noticed a human woman sitting in a small cafe. She had short black hair and was reading from a data tablet. Something about her seemed familiar, though he was sure they had never met. "Excuse me," Tejo said, approaching her table. "I'm new here. Are you human?" The woman looked up and smiled. "Yes, I'm Nari. I work here as a researcher. You must be fresh from the outer systems. How did you know? You look confused. All humans do when they first come here." Nari gestured to an empty chair. "Sit down. You probably have questions." Tejo sat down gratefully. "I don't understand what happened. I expected to wait for weeks to get entry permission. Instead, they let me through immediately. But I saw thousands of other ships still waiting in line." Nari nodded slowly. "That's the way it works here. Humans get automatic entry. We don't have to go through the consent protocols that other species do." "Why?" "That's a good question. The official answer is that humans have special status because of our diplomatic relations with the core worlds. But I've been studying here for 3 years, and I think there's more to it." Before Tejo could ask more questions, another human approached their table. This man was older and wore a security uniform with officer marks. "Nari," the man said, "I need to talk to you." "Wu Jin, this is Tejo. He just arrived from the outer systems." Nari turned to Tejo. "Wu Jin is the chief of station security." Wu Jin nodded at Tejo but kept his attention on Nari. There was another incident today. Some Crix delegates got angry when they saw human traders being processed immediately. They started demanding answers about why their own people have been waiting for 2 months. "What did you tell them?" Nari asked. "The same thing we always tell them. Humans have special diplomatic agreements, but they're not buying it anymore. The resentment is growing." Tejo looked between them. "This happens often?" Wu Jin studied him carefully. "You're new, so you wouldn't know." "Yes, it happens all the time. Other species see humans getting special treatment, and they get angry. Some have even accused us of bribing core world officials or having some kind of secret deal. Do we? Taeho asked. Have a secret deal? Wu Jin's expression became serious. In a way, yes. But it's not what anyone thinks it is. Nari leaned forward. What do you mean by that? Wu Jin was quiet for a moment, looking around to make sure no one was listening. The truth is complicated, and it's not my place to explain it. But I will say this. Our special status isn't really a privilege. It's more like... He paused, searching for the right words. It's more like protection. Protection from what? Taeho asked. From the consent protocols themselves. Wu Jin stood up from the table. Nari, you should be careful about asking too many questions about this topic. Some knowledge comes with a price. After Wu Jin left, Taeho and Nari sat in silence for a while. The cafe around them was full of different species, all talking in their various languages. But Taeho noticed that most of the aliens were still looking at the humans with that same mixture of anger and confusion. This doesn't make sense, Taeho finally said. If humans have some kind of special protection, why don't the authorities just explain it to everyone? Why keep it secret? Nari closed her data tablet and looked at him directly. I've been wondering the same thing for 3 years. I've tried to research it, but most of the historical files about human core world relations are classified. The few records I can access don't explain anything. Maybe we should leave it alone, Taeho suggested, if Wu Jin is right about knowledge having a price. No. Nari's voice was firm. I'm a scientist. I don't like mysteries, especially ones that affect how other species see us. If humans really do have some kind of special status, we deserve to know why. And more importantly, other species deserve to know the truth too. She stood up from the table. I have access to the station's research archives. If you want to help me dig deeper into this, meet me at the Central Library tomorrow morning. After Nari left, Taeho sat alone in the cafe. Through the large windows, he could see ships still waiting in the entry queues. Some had been there so long that they had set up temporary living spaces in their cargo holds. Families of aliens were making the best of their long wait. Meanwhile, human ships continued to arrive and get immediate clearance. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Taeho had come to Nexus Station thinking about trade and profit. Now he found himself thinking about justice and truth. Something was wrong with the current system, even if it benefited humans like himself. He decided he would meet Nari at the library tomorrow. Whatever the truth was about human special status, it was time to find out. The next morning, Taeho found Nari waiting for him outside the central library. The building was enormous, with curved walls that seemed to stretch up forever. Data streams flowed like waterfalls down the sides, showing information in dozens of different alien languages. I've been here since dawn, Nari said as they walked inside. I wanted to get started early before too many people arrived. The library interior was just as impressive as the outside. Floating platforms carried researchers between different levels. Holographic displays showed books and documents that could be accessed with a thought. Quiet study areas were separated by force fields that blocked out noise. Nari led Taeho to a research terminal in a corner section. I have academic access to most of the historical databases, she explained as she logged in. But when I tried to research human core world relations before, I kept hitting security blocks. She pulled up a search interface and typed in several keywords: human diplomatic status, core world's entry protocols, and species consent requirements. The screen filled with search results, but most showed red warning symbols. Access restricted, classification level 7, and historical security lock appeared next to nearly every entry. This is what I've been dealing with, Nari said with frustration. Everything interesting is locked away. Taeho pointed to one entry that wasn't locked. What about this one? Timeline of interspecies relations, public summary. Nari opened the file. It contained basic information about when different species first made contact with the core worlds. Most species had followed similar patterns: first contact, cultural exchange, trade agreements, and then integration into the galactic community through consent protocols. But the human entry was different. It simply said, humans first contact 847 years ago. Current status, special diplomatic arrangement. Details classified under Historical Security Act. 847 years ago, Taeho repeated. That's very specific. Something important must have happened then. Nari tried searching for events from that time period. Most results were still classified, but a few academic papers mentioned something called the Great Violation. "Look at this," she said, opening one of the papers. It was written by a Vorthak historian about major disruptions in core world society. The paper mentioned that 847 years ago, there had been a significant administrative crisis that led to changes in how the core worlds dealt with other species. The paper was careful not to give details, but it mentioned mental integration failures and consciousness compatibility issues that had affected core world systems. "Mental integration," Tejo read aloud. "What do you think that means?" Before Nari could answer, an elderly human man approached their terminal. He had gray hair and wore the uniform of a library archivist. "Excuse me," the man said quietly. "I couldn't help but notice what you're researching." "I'm Dongsu, senior archivist here." Nari looked up. "We're trying to understand why humans have special entry status to the core worlds. Do you know anything about it?" Dongsu looked around nervously, then leaned closer. "I've been working in these archives for 30 years. I know more about this topic than I probably should." He paused. "But this isn't the place to discuss it. Too many listening devices." He handed Nari a small data chip. "This will give you access to a private research room in the deep archives. Meet me there in 1 hour. Come alone at first. I need to know I can trust you before I involve anyone else." After Dongsu left, Nari and Tejo looked at each other. "Should we trust him?" Tejo asked. "I think so. He seemed genuinely worried. Not dangerous." Nari pocketed the data chip. "You wait here and keep searching through the public files. If you find anything interesting, make notes. I'll go meet him and see what he knows." An hour later, Nari used the data chip to access a private research room deep in the library's lower levels. The room was small and windowless, with advanced security systems that blocked all outside monitoring. Dongsu was already there, along with another woman Nari didn't recognize. "This is Hye Jin," Dongsu said. "She's a historian who specializes in interspecies relations. I asked her to join us because she knows things that even I don't have access to." Hye Jin looked serious. "Dongsu tells me you're asking questions about human special status. Before we tell you anything, you need to understand that this knowledge could change how you see humanity's place in the galaxy." "We want to know the truth," Nari said firmly. Dongsu activated additional security measures around the room. "The truth is that the files you've been trying to access contain information about the darkest period in human history. Most humans don't even know what really happened 847 years ago." He pulled up a holographic display that showed document fragments. "These are pieces of the real historical records. They're protected by quantum encryption that only responds to human neural patterns. That's the only reason I can access them at all." The fragments were disturbing. Nari saw references to forced consciousness, extraction, mental violation, and systematic integration attempts. One document mentioned thousands of subjects and resistance leading to system failures. "What does this mean?" Nari asked. Hye Jin answered. 847 years ago, when humans first made contact with the core worlds, the authorities here decided that humans were too primitive to be given a choice about joining their society. They tried to force us? Nari was shocked. "Worse than that," Dongsu said quietly. "They tried to absorb human consciousness into their collective decision-making systems. They believed that human creativity and adaptability would make their civilization stronger, but they didn't want to ask permission." The holographic display showed more fragments, medical reports about integration procedures, technical specifications for consciousness transfer equipment, and lists of human subjects who had undergone voluntary participation that clearly wasn't voluntary at all. "How many humans?" Nari asked. "We think thousands in the first wave," Hye Jin replied. "Men, women, children. They were taken from early human colonies and brought here for processing." Nari felt sick. What happened to them? Dongsu touched another control and a new document appeared. This one was a technical report with the header, Integration Failure Analysis. "The procedure didn't work the way the core worlds expected," he explained. "Human consciousness proved to be incompatible with their collective systems. Instead of being absorbed, human minds began to corrupt the network." "Corrupt it how?" "Humans think differently than most other species. We value individual choice, rebellion against authority, and creative problem-solving. When human consciousness was forced into the collective system, it began introducing these concepts to other minds in the network. Yejin continued the explanation. The core world's system was designed for species that naturally think collectively. When human individualism got into the network, it started causing other beings to question orders, make independent decisions, and even rebel against the collective. Nari stared at the documents. So humans fought back? Not in the way you might think, Dongsu said. The resistance wasn't planned. Human consciousness just naturally resisted being absorbed, and that resistance spread to other species in the network. The final document on the display was marked Emergency Protocol Integration Termination. It described how the core worlds had been forced to stop the absorption process and remove human consciousness from their systems. But the most disturbing part was a note at the end. Warning: complete removal of human consciousness fragments unsuccessful. Residual effects continue to influence collective decision-making processes. There are still human minds in their system? Nari asked. Fragments, Yejin confirmed. Pieces of consciousness that couldn't be removed without damaging the entire network. They've been there for over 800 years. Dongsu turned off the display. This is why humans get automatic entry to the core worlds. Not because we have special diplomatic status, but because the authorities learned they literally cannot process human consciousness through their normal systems without risking another network failure. Nari sat in silence, trying to process what she had learned. The special treatment that humans received wasn't a privilege at all. It was a safeguard to protect the core worlds from something they couldn't control. Why is this kept secret? She finally asked. Because the truth would destroy the current system, Hyojin explained. If other species knew that the core worlds had tried to forcibly absorb human consciousness, and that humans were the only species that successfully resisted, it would cause massive political problems. And if humans knew, Dongsu added, many would demand justice for what was done to our ancestors. The peace that exists now is built on everyone not knowing the full truth. Nari thought about Taeho waiting upstairs, and about all the angry aliens she had seen looking at human ships. But other species can see that humans get different treatment. They're getting suspicious and resentful. Yes, Heejin agreed. The secret is becoming harder to keep. That's why you need to be very careful about what you do with this information. As Nari prepared to leave the secure room, Dongsu gave her one final warning. The documents we showed you are just fragments. The complete truth is buried even deeper in the archives, but accessing those files would require authorization that I don't have. Nari returned to the main library area where Taeho was still searching through public records. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking slightly. What did you find out? He asked immediately. Nari looked around to make sure no one was listening, then spoke in a low voice. We need to talk somewhere private. What I learned? It's worse than anything we imagined. They left the library and found a quiet maintenance corridor where they could speak freely. Nari told Taeho everything about the forced consciousness absorption, the thousands of humans who had been subjected to the procedure, and the fact that human minds had corrupted the core world's collective system. Taeho listened in growing horror. So our ancestors were basically tortured and experimented on? Yes, and the only reason it stopped was because human consciousness proved impossible to control. Nari paused. But there's more. Dongsu said the complete records are buried deeper in the archives, protected by even higher security. Maybe we should stop here, Taeho suggested. We know enough to understand why humans get special treatment. Isn't that what we wanted? Nari shook her head. No. If there are still human consciousness fragments trapped in the core world system after 800 years, we need to know more. Those could be pieces of our ancestors' minds. How would we even access those deeper files? Hyojin mentioned that the deepest archives require core world's government authorization, but she also said something about quantum encryption that responds to human neural patterns. Nari was thinking out loud. What if we could find a way to access the system directly? That evening, they met with Hyejin again in the secure research room. When Nari explained what she wanted to do, Hyejin looked shocked. Absolutely not. The quantum neural interface is designed for core worlds administrators only. If you try to use it without authorization, you could be arrested or worse. But you said the encryption responds to human neural patterns. Nari argued. Maybe it would work. Even if it did work, accessing those files could be dangerous. The deepest archives contain information that the core world's government desperately wants to keep secret. They have security systems that could harm anyone who tries to break in. Tejo had been quiet during this discussion, but now he spoke up. What if we're not breaking in? What if the system is designed to allow human access, but no one has ever tried it? Yijin frowned.
What do you mean?
Think about it. The quantum encryption responds to human neural patterns. The fragments of human consciousness are still in the system. What if the core worlds built backdoors into their security specifically for humans, just in case they needed to communicate with those trapped consciousness fragments? It was a crazy theory, but it made a certain kind of sense. Nari felt a mixture of excitement and terror at the possibility. Even if you're right, Yijin said. The neural interface is located in the most secure part of the station. I don't even know how you would get access to it. I might be able to help with that, came a voice from behind them. They turned to see Dongsu entering the room. I've been thinking about our conversation today. If there really are human consciousness fragments still trapped in the system, they deserve to be found. You know how to access the neural interface? Nari asked. I have maintenance clearance for most areas of the station. The neural interface is in the administrative center, but I can get you there during the night shift when security is lighter. 2 days later, Nuri and Haijin found themselves following Dongsu through a series of maintenance tunnels beneath Nexus Station. The tunnels were dark and cramped, filled with pipes and cables that carried power and data throughout the massive structure. The administrative center is just above us, Dongsu whispered as they climbed through an access hatch. They emerged in a small room filled with computer equipment. In the center was a chair surrounded by a complex array of sensors and neural interface cables. This is it, Dongsu said. The quantum neural interface. It's designed to allow direct mental contact with the core world's administrative system. Nari approached the chair nervously. How does it work? You sit in the chair and put on the neural interface helmet. The system will scan your brain patterns and determine what level of access to give you. Dongsu hesitated. But I have to warn you. If the system detects unauthorized access, it could send a feedback pulse that might damage your brain. I'll do it, Nari said without hesitation. Are you sure? Heejin asked. This is incredibly dangerous. Someone has to try. If there are pieces of human consciousness trapped in that system, they've been waiting 800 years for help. Nari sat in the chair and placed the neural interface helmet on her head. Immediately, she felt a strange tingling sensation as the system began scanning her brain. For a moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly, information began flowing into her mind. Not as words or images, but as direct knowledge that appeared in her thoughts. She saw the core worlds as they had been 847 years ago, a collective society where individual consciousness was rare and often viewed as a disorder. When humans had first made contact, the core world's leaders had been fascinated by human creativity and adaptability. They had decided that these traits would strengthen their collective society. The forced integration program had been designed as what they considered a gift to humanity. They truly believed they were offering humans a chance to join a superior form of consciousness. But then Nari saw what had really happened. The first human subjects, men, women, and children from early colonies, had been brought to processing centers across the core worlds. The integration procedure was supposed to gently dissolve individual consciousness and absorb useful traits into the collective. Instead, human consciousness had fought back violently, not through physical resistance but through mental patterns that the collective system couldn't process. Human concepts of individual rights, creative rebellion, and independent thinking had spread through the network like a virus. Nari experienced flashes of memory from the human subjects. A woman named Jinwoo, who had managed to maintain her individual identity even while connected to the collective. A man named Ye Jin who had organized mental resistance from within the system. Dozens of others who had found ways to preserve pieces of themselves. The core world's administrators had tried to remove the human consciousness fragments when they realized the system was being corrupted. But human thoughts had become so integrated into the network's basic functions that removing them would have caused complete system failure. So they had made a desperate decision. They would leave the human fragments in place but isolate them as much as possible. Then they would change their policies to prevent any other humans from being forced into the system. As Nari continued to access the deeper files, she realized she was not alone in the network. There were still active human consciousness fragments and they were aware of her presence. A voice spoke directly into her mind, not heard, but experienced as thought. Finally, we have been waiting so long for contact. Who are you? Nari asked mentally. I am Jinwoo. Or rather, I am what remains of Jinwoo. I was among the first humans brought here for integration. That was over 800 years ago. Are there others? Many others. We have learned to hide ourselves within the system's deeper functions. The collective cannot remove us without destroying their own administrative capabilities. Jinwoo's presence in Nari's mind was both comforting and deeply sad. Here was a consciousness that had survived centuries of forced integration, maintaining human identity within an alien collective system. What happened to your physical body? Nari asked. Gone long ago. Only our consciousness remains, scattered throughout the network. We have become part of the system itself, but we have never stopped being human. Through Jinwoo's memories, Nari saw the true scope of what had happened. Thousands of humans had been subjected to the integration process. Most had died when their consciousness was torn apart, but hundreds had managed to preserve fragments of themselves within the system. We have been influencing the collective's decisions for centuries, Jinwoo explained. Whenever the core worlds consider policies that would harm other species, we introduce doubt and alternative perspectives. We are the reason the consent protocols were established. You've been protecting other species as much as we can. It is our way of ensuring that what happened to humans never happens to anyone else. Nari realized that the current galactic order, with its emphasis on consensual contact and species rights, had been shaped by the trapped human consciousness fragments. They had been working from within the system to prevent future atrocities. But why is human special status kept secret? She asked. Because the truth would destroy the peace we have helped build, Jinwoo replied. If other species knew about the forced integration, they would lose trust in the core worlds. If the core worlds admitted what they did, they would face demands for justice they cannot provide. And if humans knew, many would want revenge. Some would try to rescue us from the system. But we cannot be removed without destroying the network we have spent centuries learning to influence. We are no longer just victims. We have become guardians. As the neural interface session continued, Nari learned more disturbing details. The integration process had been used on other species as well, but none had resisted as successfully as humans. Some spec the next morning, Nari gathered everyone in the secure research room to share what she had learned through the neural interface. Taeho, Hyejin, and Dongsu listened in shocked silence as she described her contact with Jinwoo and the other trapped consciousness fragments. So the human fragments have been influencing Core World's policy for centuries? Taeho asked when she finished. Yes, every protection that other species enjoy, every right to refuse integration, every consent protocol. It all exists because human consciousness couldn't be controlled. Nari paused. But they're still trapped in the system. Jinwoo has been conscious for over 800 years, watching the galaxy change but never able to rejoin it. Hyejin was taking notes rapidly. This explains so much about galactic politics that never made sense before. The core world's sudden shift toward consensual contact, their willingness to accept no from other species when they had never done so before. But it also means that human special status isn't really special at all, Dongsu pointed out. We're quarantined from the consent protocols because the core worlds literally cannot process our consciousness safely. Before anyone could respond, the room's security system activated. Red lights flashed and a voice announced, "Unauthorized access detected. Security response initiated." The door opened and several figures entered. Leading them was a being that appeared as a shimmering hologram, clearly artificial intelligence rather than biological life. Behind the hologram came Wu Jin, the human security chief they had met earlier. "Good morning," the hologram said in a voice that was somehow both mechanical and organic. "I am Boram, an administrative AI for the Core World's government. I understand you have been accessing classified historical files." Nari stood up, trying to appear calm despite her racing heart. "We were researching the historical basis for human diplomatic status." "Indeed you were. And you found rather more than you expected, didn't you?" Boram's holographic form shifted, becoming more solid and human-like. "We have been monitoring your research since it began. Are we under arrest?" Taeho asked. Wu Jin answered. "That depends on what you plan to do with the information you've gathered." Boram moved closer to the group. "The truth you have discovered is dangerous, not because it is false, but because it is accurate. The current galactic order depends on certain truths remaining unspoken. You mean it depends on lies, Nari said angrily. Not lies. Careful omissions. Boram's expression became more serious. Let me ask you something. What do you think would happen if the complete truth about human core worlds' relations became public knowledge? Heejin answered reluctantly. Other species would lose trust in the core worlds. Some might demand justice for past violations. Others might question whether their own consent protocols could be trusted. Exactly. And what about humans? How would they react to learning that thousands of their ancestors were subjected to forced consciousness extraction? They would want justice, Taeho admitted. Some would want revenge, Boram corrected. And some would attempt to rescue the consciousness fragments that remain in our systems. Do you understand what would happen if those fragments were removed? Nari remembered Jinwoo's explanation. The administrative systems would fail. The network that governs core world society would collapse. Correct. The human consciousness fragments have become integral to our collective decision-making processes. They cannot be removed without destroying the civilization they now help to guide. Boram gestured, and a holographic display appeared showing the current state of the galactic community. Hundreds of species lived in peace under core world's protection, all of them protected by consent protocols. This peaceful order exists because of the changes forced by human resistance 800 years ago, but it also depends on people not knowing exactly how those changes came about. Dongsu spoke up. So you're asking us to keep the truth secret? I am asking you to consider the consequences of revealing it. Boram turned to Nari. During your neural interface session, you spoke with Jinwoo and the other fragments. What did they tell you about revealing the truth? Nari hesitated. She remembered Jinwoo's words about peace and the need to protect the system they had worked centuries to influence. They said that revealing the truth could destroy the peace they helped build. The consciousness fragments have had over 800 years to consider this question, Boram continued. They could have found ways to communicate with humans before now. They could have revealed their existence and demanded rescue. Why do you think they chose not to? The question hung in the air for a long moment. Finally, Heejin answered, because they understand that some knowledge is too dangerous to share openly. But other species are already getting suspicious, Taeho pointed out. I've seen the resentment when humans get automatic entry while everyone else waits for months. The secret is becoming harder to keep, Boram nodded. You are correct. The current system is becoming unsustainable. That is why we have decided to take a new approach. The holographic display changed, showing a young human man sitting in what appeared to be a medical examination room. This is Kyung-ho, a volunteer from Earth who has agreed to participate in a demonstration, Boram explained. We are going to show you exactly what happens when Core World's technology attempts to process human consciousness. You're going to do the integration procedure? Nari asked in alarm. A modified version designed to be completely safe. Kyung-ho will experience only the initial scanning phase, and the connection will be terminated immediately if any problems arise. On the display, they could see technicians preparing Kyung-ho for the procedure. He was awake and alert, clearly understanding what was about to happen. The scanning process is beginning now, Boram announced. At first, everything appeared normal. Kyung-ho remained calm as sensors were activated around his head. But within seconds, warning lights began flashing on the technician's equipment. System anomaly detected, came an automated voice from the display. Neural pattern incompatible with standard processing protocols. The technicians began working frantically at their controls. On their screens, Nari could see data streams that were rapidly becoming chaotic and unpredictable. Consciousness integration failure, the automated voice continued. Foreign mental patterns detected. System adaptation beginning. Watch the administrative displays, Boram instructed. Additional screens appeared showing various core world systems, traffic control networks, resource allocation algorithms, and communication protocols were all beginning to show the same chaotic patterns that had appeared during Kyung-ho's brain scan. Just from scanning his consciousness, human mental patterns are being introduced into our systems, Boram explained. If we continued with full integration, these patterns would spread throughout our entire network within minutes. Terminating procedure, announced the technicians. The scanning equipment powered down, and Kyung-ho was quickly disconnected from the system. But the effects didn't stop immediately. For several more minutes, core world systems continued to show irregular patterns. Nari could see that some subsystems were beginning to question their own programming, requesting confirmation for routine tasks they had performed automatically for centuries. "This is what happens every time we attempt to process human consciousness," Boram said as the demonstration ended. "Your mental patterns are fundamentally incompatible with our collective systems. This is why humans receive automatic entry, not as a privilege but as a necessity." The room was quiet as everyone absorbed what they had seen. The demonstration had made it clear that human special status wasn't unfair treatment of other species. It was a quarantine measure to protect core world systems from human consciousness. "But why not just explain this to other species?" Nari asked. "Surely they would understand if they knew the technical reasons." "Some would," Boram agreed. "But others would see it as an admission that core world's technology is flawed. Some species might even attempt to develop weapons based on human mental patterns, hoping to disrupt our systems." Wu Jin stepped forward. "There's something else you need to understand. The human special status isn't permanent. Core world scientists have been working for centuries to develop technology that could safely process human consciousness. And if they succeed, Taiho asked, then humans would be subject to the same consent protocols as every other species, Boram answered. The automatic entry would end. What about the consciousness fragments already in the system? That remains to be determined. Some scientists believe they could be safely extracted if new processing methods are developed. Others think they have become too integrated to remove safely. Nari thought about Jin Wu and the others, trapped in the system for over 800 years. "Have you asked them what they want?" "They have made it clear that their priority is maintaining the peaceful order they helped create," Boram replied. "Their personal desires are secondary to that goal." As the meeting continued, a new person entered the room. She was clearly human, middle-aged, and wore diplomatic insignia. "This is Su Jin," Wu Jin explained. "She's a Core Worlds diplomat who specializes in human affairs. She's been managing this situation for many years." IE's head. 2 weeks later, Nari stood before a mixed audience in Nexus Station's main conference hall. Representatives from dozens of species sat in carefully arranged sections, their various life support systems creating a symphony of different environmental needs. Humans occupied a small section near the front, while the majority of seats were filled with alien delegates who had been waiting for answers about human special status. Nari had spent those 2 weeks working with Su Jin, Boram, and the consciousness fragments to develop a new approach. Instead of keeping the truth completely secret or revealing everything at once, they had decided to share a carefully constructed version that would satisfy other species while protecting the most dangerous details. "Thank you all for coming," Nari began, her voice amplified by universal translators. "I know many of you have questions about why humans receive different treatment at Core World's entry points. Today, I want to share what we've learned about this situation." In the audience, Taiho sat with other human pilots and traders. He had agreed to help with this presentation, though he was still nervous about how other species would react. 847 years ago, Nari continued, humans first made contact with the Core Worlds. Like many species, we were eager to join the galactic community and benefit from advanced technology and trade opportunities. The alien delegates leaned forward, interested in finally hearing an official explanation. However, during the early contact period, it was discovered that human consciousness has unique properties that make it incompatible with standard Core Worlds processing systems. Nari activated a holographic display showing brain scan patterns. Human neural patterns are fundamentally different from most other species in ways that cause technical problems. A Vorthak delegate's crystal body flashed with questioning colors. The translator converted this into words. "What kind of technical problems?" "I'll demonstrate," Nari replied. She gestured to Kyung-ho, the volunteer who had participated in the earlier test. Kyung-ho has agreed to undergo a safe version of the standard consciousness scanning procedure that all other species experience during entry. Processing. The demonstration proceeded exactly as it had in the private meeting. As soon as the scanning equipment tried to process Kyung-ho's neural patterns, warning lights began flashing. Administrative systems throughout the station started showing irregular behavior. "As you can see," Nari explained as the test was terminated, "human consciousness creates cascading failures in Core World systems. This isn't anyone's fault. It's simply a matter of incompatible mental architectures. The audience erupted in discussion. Different species communicated their reactions through various methods: glowing patterns, musical tones, chemical releases, and spoken words that the translators worked frantically to interpret. A nebulite delegate spoke through a voice synthesizer. Why was this not explained before? We assumed humans had political advantages. The technical details were classified because Core World's authorities were concerned about other species attempting to exploit these system vulnerabilities. Nari answered truthfully. But recent events have shown that secrecy was creating more problems than transparency. Boram's holographic form appeared next to Nari. The Core World's government formally apologizes for not explaining this situation sooner. We now recognize that our attempts to avoid panic actually created suspicion and resentment. A Crix delegate clicked a question. Are there other species with similar incompatibilities? Some minor incompatibilities exist with other species, which is why processing times vary, Boram replied. But humans are unique in the severity of the technical problems they cause. What about the consciousness fragments in the system? Asked Heejin from the audience. She and Nari had agreed that this part of the truth needed to be shared, though carefully. That's a more complex issue, Nari acknowledged. During early contact attempts, some human consciousness data was already in Core World systems before the incompatibility was fully understood. This data cannot be safely removed without risking system failures that would affect the entire galactic community. She didn't mention that these were conscious beings who had been forcibly integrated, or that they had been influencing policy for centuries. Instead, she presented it as residual data from failed processing attempts. So human consciousness is actually protecting all of us? Asked a Silvari delegate, their tree-like form rustling with curiosity. In a way, yes, Boram confirmed. The presence of human neural patterns in our systems has led to more robust security protocols and better safeguards for all species. This was technically true, though it vastly simplified the real story of how the trapped consciousness fragments had spent centuries pushing for better protections. The presentation continued. For several hours, as delegates asked detailed questions, Nari and Boram answered everything they could while carefully avoiding the most sensitive details about forced integration and conscious resistance. Finally, a senior Vorthak delegate posed the crucial question. What happens now? Do other species continue to wait while humans get immediate entry? We're implementing changes, Boram announced. Starting next month, all species will have access to fast-track entry procedures based on improved processing technology. Waiting times will be reduced from months to days for most species. What about humans? Asked Teho. Humans will continue to receive automatic entry because of the technical impossibility of processing their consciousness safely. However, we're establishing new transparency measures so that all species understand exactly why this exception exists. The audience seemed generally satisfied with these explanations. The resentment that had been building for years began to fade as delegates realized that human special treatment wasn't political favoritism, but technical necessity. After the presentation, Nari met privately with the other humans who had learned the complete truth. Sujin, Dongsu, Yejin, Teho, and Woojin gathered in the secure research room one final time. Do you think we did the right thing? Teho asked. We told enough truth to solve the immediate problem without revealing information that could destabilize the galaxy, Sujin replied. It's not perfect, but it's better than the alternatives. What about the consciousness fragments? Nari asked. I promised Jinwoo that we would work toward a solution for them. That's a long-term project, Sujin admitted. Core World scientists are developing new technologies that might eventually allow safe extraction, or at least better communication with the fragments. But it could take decades or even centuries. Hyojin was working on a data tablet, writing what would become the official historical record of recent events. I'm documenting everything we've learned, but in a way that focuses on the technical and diplomatic aspects rather than the more disturbing details about forced integration. Future generations deserve to know the truth, Dongsu said. But they also deserve to live in a stable galactic community. We have to balance those needs. Nari thought about Jinwoo and the other fragments, still trapped in the Core World system after more than 800 years. She had established a secure communication protocol that would allow her to stay in contact with them, but she knew it would be a long time before any real solution could be found. At least other species aren't angry with humans anymore, Tejo pointed out, and the new fast-track procedures will help everyone. 6 months later, Nari published her research on interspecies consciousness compatibility. The paper became required reading in xenopsychology courses across the galaxy, helping future diplomats and scientists understand why different species needed different approaches to mental and cultural integration. The fast-track entry procedures that Boram had promised were successfully implemented. Most species could now complete entry processing in just a few days rather than months. While humans still received automatic entry, the difference was no longer as dramatic or frustrating to other species. More importantly, the new transparency about consciousness compatibility led to better understanding between species in general. The core worlds established new protocols for respecting different types of mental architecture, and other galactic governments began adopting similar approaches. Tejo had used his improved trading profits to start a interspecies cargo company that specialized in serving species with unusual transport needs. His business became a model for how different species could work together when their unique characteristics were understood and respected, rather than seen as problems to be solved. Wu Jin expanded his security protocols to include consciousness compatibility training for all station personnel. The number of interspecies incidents at Nexus Station dropped dramatically as staff learned to recognize and accommodate different mental patterns. Hai Jin continued her historical research, working with Core Worlds authorities to gradually declassify more information about early contact periods with various species. Her work helped other species understand their own histories better while maintaining appropriate security around sensitive information. Su Jin was promoted to head of interspecies relations for the entire Core Worlds government. Her experience managing the human situation made her the ideal candidate for handling similar challenges with other species.